Hey, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Sherrod Show. I'm your host, Sherrod, for a very special Sunday episode of the show. We actually have Hollywood royalty in the building here
Oh,
on the show. We're so excited to have this gentleman on the show. We were getting to him momentarily, but the Sherrod Show is brought to you by the Pure Essence Television Network, where you can see some of the greatest episodes now trending from Floyd Mayweather to The Temptations to Michael Collier, Joe Montega, Jay Leno, just to name a few. Just click the link below and you can see the greatest episodes of your life. It's also brought to you by iHeartRadio. If you missed this broadcast on television, you can also listen to it on iHeartRadio. And lastly, it's brought to you by my limited edition Rah Rah shoe collection, where every $1 goes to the fight for the cure for lupus. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this gentleman who stopped by the show was on one of the most popular sitcoms in the 80s. He was known for as the wisecracking youngster of the family with the beautiful, charming smile, Ben Seaver. And he has stopped by the Sherrod Show to talk about what life has been like since Growing Pains, as well as what he's up to now. And also some of the voiceovers that you may not have known was him, but that was his voice. Ladies and gentlemen, the man himself, Mr. Jeremy Miller. Welcome to the Sherrod Show, sir. How are you?
right. How are you, my friend? It's good to see you.
Such an honor to see you as well again, Jeremy. So, Jeremy, let's jump right into it first and foremost. With the popularity, the 7 year popularity of Growing Pains, how did your life change being known as Ben Seaver?
Honestly, because I started so young, I almost didn't know anything else. You know what I mean? We struggled as a starting actor, and my mom as a part-time school teacher, a divorced single mom. I mean, we struggled. Believe me, when I was auditioning for years without getting parts, we were living on our church food bank, and we were there. Believe me. But by 7 years old, I started booking stuff. I started booking guest spots on all the different popular shows, Punky Brewster, Different Strokes, Charles in Charge, etc. Um, I booked a movie, I booked a TV movie, and then I got growing pains. So a 7 year run at 8 years old, half my life was spent being a successful actor and being on a show where from day one I was known, which was a very weird thing. The first time somebody came and asked for my autograph, it was first season. I'm barely 8 years old. It was like, what? You want my okay? It was shocking. So life was different very quickly.
Now, Jeremy, when you look at the success of the show, it was because it was one of my fan favorites. It was as popular as Family Ties. People don't realize that you were up there with Family Ties and the Cosby Show and so many
Mhm.
during that period in time. So now, what was it like as a child actor? For example, how was schooling? Did you get schooled on the set? Would you go to a regular school? How did it go?
So during the season, I had set schooling. I had a private tutor. The very first season, Kirk, Tracy, and I all had the same tutor. We were all in the same schoolroom, which I got to admit was a lot of fun. We had a good time with each other. But I was probably suffering a bit because we had two high school age kids learning, and then you had an elementary kid. So by second season, they got me my own teacher. We were all still kind of around each other, so I never felt isolated, but it actually worked out very well in some ways for me because I am ADD, like very, very ADD. So having a one on one teacher actually helped me learn. But on the flip side, it also hid my learning disability, my ADD, because I learned so well and I excelled at school. Nobody really noticed. So I only went back to school, to regular school, about twice a month, or once a year for 2 months. Right at the end of the season, we'd end in March, and I would get to go back to school. So from March to April, April to May, and then very early June or late May, we'd be done. So I did get to socialize. Did get to have kind of a normal life, in interacting with my peers. But for the most part, it kind of hid the things I was dealing with. So when I did get out of the show and get out of the one-on-one tutoring, um, my ADD and my learning definitely showed up more. I struggled a lot more on tests. I struggled a lot more on learning and homework. And it just started to become a much more prominent thing.
Now, this is interesting because you were a childhood star. You look at Danny Bonaducci.
Mhm.
You look at Gary Coleman. You look at Emmanuel Lewis. You look at so many childhood stars, and a lot of times you look at Jimmy Walker, and you look at their life after the sitcom or the show canceled. Many times they get typecast, or they get to going into drugs and get to doing a lot of things because they can't find work and things. Is that something you
Mhm.
suffered as well?
I definitely suffered from the typecasting for a little bit. Um, I think I could have broken out of it had I stayed auditioning and working towards it. I took about a 5 year break where I just kind of had burned out and I wanted to live a normal life for a little bit and just get away. That, from a career standpoint, was probably a mistake. I had doors open at the time and I was still getting called in regularly. Those things definitely got more scarce when I came back. But the typecasting wasn't as big of an issue for me. I had a lot of traumas that weren't related to the industry. I mean, there were things that ended up with that. We'll definitely get into that, but I didn't have a lot of traumas related to the industry. Even though I may have been around a few shady characters, I was mostly around really good people who looked out for me. My traumas came from personal stuff, my stepfather and other stuff like that. A lot of abuse, sexual and otherwise. It wasn't a great situation.
Now, now, now,
I
now, Jeremy, is that something you care to share more about?
Well, it's something I've been open with. I don't get into specifics. Unfortunately, I have my little brothers who are from him, and I try not to get into too many specifics. But I was abused for multiple years by my step idiot. That's the nicest name I can come up with him. I have a few others. I'm not going to say those online, but you know, um, I was mentally abused by him many times. And it wasn't until I got big enough to stand up and I had been training martial arts for multiple years that I was able to put a stop to that. Um, I blocked a lot of that off. I think that's honestly a trait that a lot of us kid actors have. You have to be able to shut off what's going on with you personally a lot of times to be able to perform. And I've always called it flipping the switch. And to give you an example, I was in an audition. I was in line for an audition when I got the phone call from my brother that my grandmother had passed. And there's probably no more important human being short of my mother that has ever lived except for my grandma. No bigger influence in my life. And I still had to go in and read. I still had to go audition. And my fiance, who was with me, tried to hug me and like comfort me. And I said, don't. I said, stop. I can't go there right now. I have to finish this. And I shut it off. And I went in and I performed and I killed it and I got the part. And then I walked outside into the hallway and I literally collapsed because the switch had been turned off and it all hit me. So unfortunately, that's something that we learn very young is that switch, in being a professional and shutting off anything that can mess with that. But like I said, I chased the bottle. I went down the addiction road because of personal trauma. I wasn't so traumatized by the business or because I couldn't work or because people had typecast me. I hadn't had a job in a while. Those things were all tough, but it's not why I was searching for an answer in a bottle. My stuff was very personal.
But no, Jeremy, one thing as we're going down that template, one thing that was very interesting, you started drinking at 4 years old. Is that correct?
I had an affinity. Now, let's just say I grew up in a family where drinking was very normalized. I had grandparents who were classic 70s alcoholics. You know, they didn't drink, you know, all day. They went to work every day, paid all their bills, but you could be sure by 5:15 they'd be in their favorite bar seat pounding away that night. Um, I grew up with that normal. So at 4 years old is what my grandma used to say. My mom says it was around 6. I started going around after grandma and grandpa's parties and finishing off all the leftover beers. And most kids would go, ew, or whatever, or they'd get a little tipsy and be like, oh, I don't feel good. I would go and finish as many beers as I could until I would literally pass out in my grandpa's chair. So I've always said that probably shows I had an affinity for it, whether it's genetic or otherwise. I mean, that's not a normal thing that kids do.
Now, so you eventually became an alcoholic?
It took a while. I mean, there wasn't a lot of access as a kid, even being on the show. I mean, I had moments. Um, you know, found a bottle of I think it was wild turkey or scotch in our prop guy's room, and I pounded down like a solo cup's worth that one time. But most of the opportunities were kind of few and far between. But every time they were there, I went overboard. I mean, it was always to complete excess. So it wasn't until around, I don't know, maybe 19, 20 years old that I started drinking regularly. Um, I had kind of discovered the social lubricant aspect of it. And with my ADD, I also had a social anxiety disorder, a lot of issues dealing with the abuse. So if I had a few shots or I had a few belts, I felt more confident. I felt more comfortable in my own skin, and I was able to be more normal, be more friendly, be more whatever. So when that started to happen, that's when it became a more regular thing. I started drinking practically every day. Um, Usually after 4 or 5. I mean, just like my grandparents. It wasn't until we went and did the first Growing Pains reunion movie in Montreal where I started drinking early in the day. And it was just a social thing. We went to Montreal, which is a very European, very, you know, it's not very American feeling. You go walking down the the streets, and at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the cafes are full of people sipping coffee or a beer. You're like, don't you people work? But it, like I said, it's very European. It's they take their breaks and they do their thing. So the first time we went out to lunch, everybody ordered drinks, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is acceptable? And for an alcoholic, that probably wasn't a good thing. So that was the beginning of my like all day drinking. And it, of course, for an alcoholic, only went down from there. And I was very blessed that I had a lot of people looking out for me that kept it from getting worse, as maybe as bad as it could have early on. Maybe that was a blessing, maybe not. Maybe it would have helped me get sober earlier, but I had a lot of people that looked out for me, and rock bottom never got as bad as it could have or probably should have.
So now, because most alcoholics, at a time, they have a point or a time where they just hit rock bottom, and they just know this is when I need to get help. This is enough. Like I've known many that when they just drink to the point where they're shaking, they know it's just enough. You know, they wake up, as soon as they wake up, they drink, and then they go to bed, they're drinking. You didn't have a moment like that?
I did. Here's the thing about rock bottoms. There are many different levels, and when you get to yours, that's the right time. I have friends who had to end up on Skid Row. I mean, literally, I had friends who had to lose every last thing, not a single family member talking to them, not a single dime, living on Skid Row an inch from death. They had to get there before they could see it and get better. I've had people that, God, I respect them, and I wish I could have been that one, who are freaking 19 or 20 years old who saw it early and saw the path and had one moment that was their rock bottom, and they said never again. I would have loved to be that person, but it takes what it takes. Mine was, we had gone to Texas for my brother-in-law's wedding, and we went weeks early to help set up. And of course, weddings are very stressful. I had been trying to stop at that time. I'd been what we call white knuckling it, just holding on and hoping. And the pressure got too much. I ran for the bottle and I had a particularly drunken episode. And my fiance, of course, called me out and was very upset with me. And I was honestly trying to be selfless. I really didn't, I wasn't thinking I'm going to go home and keep drinking. There was nothing about me in this moment, but all I thought was, I'm going to screw up this wedding. I do not want to destroy my brother in law's wedding. I'm going to go home. So I tried to change my ticket and get an earlier flight, and I was just going to go home so I didn't end up effing everything up. And that freaked my fiance Joni out. All she could see was me going home and pounding and just doing stupid things that would ruin our life. So when I tried to leave, she jumped on my back, like, and physically tried to restrain me. And I threw her off of me. I mean, I didn't hit her, I did nothing else, but since she was on me, I turned and I literally threw her off of me. And she hit the floor and really hurt her wrist. And here I am sitting there staring at the woman I love the most in the world, and I just hurt her. And that broke me. That was it. That was the absolute, I have to do something. Like I said, I didn't assault her. I didn't do, I mean, if you're being technical about it, she kind of jumped on me first, but I hurt the woman I loved. There was no excuse for that. And that broke me completely. I mean, it absolutely just shut me down.
Ladies and gentlemen, for those who are just joining us, we're speaking to Hollywood royalty, the man himself, Mr. Jeremy Miller. Very candid conversation about his life, his legacy, as well as the things he's done. We will be taking your questions momentarily. We're going to come up for some air, and when we come back, we'll have more with Mr. Miller right after this.
Here's an important message from the U.S. Med Diabetes Solutions Center. If you have diabetes, you know the pain of pricking your fingers. But now, by wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce your pain right away. It's easy to use and helps you make more accurate diabetes treatment decisions. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. Call the U.S. Med Diabetes Solutions Center to learn about this groundbreaking new CGM technology. If you have Medicare or private insurance, call to see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no cost. Shipping is free and will even bill your insurance company for you. U.S. Med is the #1 rated supplier on Google and Facebook reviews. So call us right now to see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no cost. U.S. Med. Better service. Better care.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Sherrod Show. I'm your host, Sherrod, for a very special Sunday conversation with the man himself, Mr. Jeremy Miller, talking about his life, his legacy, as well as going through various traumas. Now, let's talk about something really interesting you were talking about earlier. Now, you mentioned about your stepfather. We don't want to get intimately with the details, but when this was happening and you were getting abused by your stepfather, did your mom know anything about it? Or did you tell her?
No, I knew my mother'd kill him. That's, my mother's a mama bear. I mean, in the truest definition of the word. She is my grandmother's daughter, and my grandmother was a protector. My grandmother went through some shit. She damn near killed by her husband like 3 different times, my biological grandfather. She was a fighter. And you didn't mess with people she loved. And that was my mother's point of view too. So even as a young child, I knew if I told her what had happened, she'd kill him. And then she's going to be in prison. I mean, she absolutely would have.
Now,
So
did she ever find out? Did you ever tell her later on?
many years later, it was, I had to have been, I want to say 35, 36 at least before we finally had that conversation. maybe I should have, maybe I shouldn't have, but I felt like I was protecting her and our family, and I couldn't see my mom going to jail for something, like that. It had already happened. It wasn't going to make it any better, but I knew her instincts wouldn't be good. So yeah, I hid it. I hid it for a very long time.
So now, where's your stepdad now?
Unfortunately, still alive, but I don't have any dealings with him anymore, and you know, it is what it is. I've long ago forgiven him for what he did to me, the torture he put my mother and my brothers through. I'll probably never be able to forgive him for, but you know, he's one of the true evil human beings I've ever met in my life, and that's about the best thing I can say about the man.
Well, we appreciate that. Now, Jeremy, when it comes down to life and growing pains, the most popular star of this show was Kirk Cameron, and
Yes,
he
sir.
he dealt with enormous fame from that
Mm.
role. Now, how did he deal with it from the because it was a period where he was getting as many letters as Michael J. Fox from the girls and all these
He was actually getting more than Michael J. Fox at one point. The only person who was getting more fan mail than him in the world at that point was Michael Jackson.
Wow, he was at that's holy cow. So how was Kurt ever able to deal with that and still be able to deliver
Not
on
well.
set?
Not well, actually. He really struggled with a lot of that. And I'm not being me. I mean, he's talked about this. We've talked about it. It was hard for him. He didn't get it. I don't know if it's that imposter syndrome people talk about now or whatever else, but he couldn't understand why people cared so much. And it was very much a struggle for him. On top of that, just the level of fame. I mean, I could still go out. I was very well known, but I could still go places. Kirk had to have like a sheriff's escort when he left the house because people would drive him off the road to get his autograph or get a picture. I mean, he had that happen multiple times. I'm not kidding. Like a car literally veer him off the road to stop him so that they could try and ask for an autograph or a picture. He had multiple attempts on his life. He from stalkers and things like that. This is not a life I would have ever wanted. I've always said, having watched what he had to go through with that high level of fame, dude, I'd rather be the guest star. You know what I'm saying? I'd rather work consistently and be a little less known because I watched him go through that and it was hard. And that
So,
was where a lot of his struggle and search for himself came from. And that's where a lot of his faith came from, was that's where he found some understanding.
now, this is an interesting question because you were mentioning about Kirk Cameron and comparing to Michael Jackson. Only Michael Jackson got more letters, but there was an individual who I got to pick your brain to find. Did he get more? Because his fame was so absolutely incredible, and that's David Cassidy.
Oh,
His was to a level that it was Michael Jackson level. But
you're
what do you
talking
think?
about my mother's era, and she would fall on the floor at the name of David Cassidy. So, yes, but you have to realize each time it's about more access. So post office working better, ways to access your celebrity, find out where his publicity office is, or even his home. Those things were much easier to do in our era than they were in David Cassidy's era, just like now. That's why I try and tell people, you think the Backstreet Boys were big? They lived in the era of social media. Do you know how big Kirk would have been if every person on the planet could have just found him on his phone? I mean, he was receiving 7,500 handwritten letters a day.
A day?
A day. This is back in the time of handwritten, fan mail. 7,500 fan letters a day
How
were
many were you
coming.
receiving, Jeremy?
Me, I got in the area of maybe 500, 400 to 500 a day
Mhm,
at
mhm,
one point when we were at our biggest,
mhm.
which is still a lot. But Kirk had that level that people just don't get now. And like I said, had you had social media and access like they do now, you'd be talking about a guy with 200 million followers in his first week. I mean, it was that level of fame and popularity.
Wow. So now, how was life on the set
Oh,
based upon that?
life on the set was actually awesome. We were very taken care of. We were very protected. And, having such a wonderful cast and crew made it very easy. We were a 200-person family. I've always said it. We knew our cameraman's kids. We knew our writers' kids. We were a big family, and having all those people looking out for you always was awesome. Having that many people care about you was awesome. Having that many people you could go to for advice was awesome. And then having two absolutely amazing surrogate parents like Alan Thicke and Joanna Kearns was incredible because they really did love us and look out for us like they were parents.
It's such a beautiful show. We really enjoyed watching it. It helped shape my childhood as well. I see the questions lining up. We'll get to you momentarily. Now, you had an incident with a stalker as well. Tell us a little bit about that.
So we had a few on the show. One of them in particular was aimed at Kirk, and it came through me, weird enough. There was a guy, a very specific guy, who had been abusing young boys. And what he would do is he would get on set and use all different stories. He was a total con man. And he would take pictures with the celebrities. And then he would make, network publicity photos that would say, on a very special episode of Growing Pains, guest star this and this. And then he would put himself in those pictures and use that to gain influence over young actors and stuff and would abuse them. And I don't know if he had ever harmed anyone before, but he had set up a moment to come on set, and it had to do with Kirk. Long story, he had tried to come through me. He had a very credible story. He used the name of a guy I had met at different celebrity events who had a brother with leukemia, sob story. And so thankfully, I didn't give him tickets. I set him up with the office to get tickets. And they were already looking out for red flags, and they got this guy. So they set up a sting. And they put in metal detectors at the front of our studio. And when he showed up and was in line, he saw the metal detectors and made a beeline right toward Kirk's trailer. And when he did that, we had 20 undercover cops come out of the woodwork and just take him down. And he had a loaded weapon. And we don't know what he was going to do if he got to Kirk's trailer, but he had a loaded weapon and he had made a beeline directly for Kirk's trailer. So that was thwarted. I then, at the age of 13 or 14, noticed that we had a bunch of guys with earpieces and full length leather black trench coats following all of us around set. And in particular, no one else had more than one, and I had three. I'm not a stupid kid, so I kind of noticed something was going on, and I went to my buddy who was the head of security for us, my buddy Dave, and I said, "Dude, what's going on? I come on, I'm not stupid. Tell me what's going on." And he said, "I cannot give you details, but you're the high horse at the trough. You're the one they're watching." So I went back to my parents and I found out what was going on. And I had had a stalker who had been writing me letters for almost 2.5 years, me amongst other people as well. I mean, Prince Harry and Prince William and a couple others. But he had a real affinity for me. And he apparently in these letters wrote some really graphic stuff about wanting to kill me and rape me and strangle me and all sorts of other stuff. And in very interesting orders sometimes, but he had issues. And one time he actually wrote the date he was going to show up. And we got everything in place. But before that, the head of Warner Brothers Security, Gavin DeBecker, I believe his name was, and an FBI agent showed up on this guy's door because he had been so intoxicated when he wrote this threatening letter, he had put his address on it. So they showed up on his door and they actually arrested him, and he went to prison for, I want to say it was 36 months. But the day he got out, he called me with a threat. So he didn't really rehab, apparently, and I turned that over to the FBI when it happened, and I never heard anything about it after. So I don't know. But yeah, it's there's some really interesting, crap out there. I mean, you know about Rebecca Schaefer from My Sister Sam. No? So Rebecca, My Sister Sam was a great show that actually filmed on our lot. It filmed right next door to us. Rebecca Schaefer was the young daughter on the show. She was like 16, 17 years old. Actually played 16 or 17. I think she was like 19 or 20. And one day she didn't show up to set. We got there on Monday and she just wasn't there. And everybody's wondering what's going on. And she had been stabbed by a stalker on her doorstep 16 times.
She
And
died?
she died. And her case is the reason we have stalker laws on the books. There was no laws about this before that happened to her.
Well, how
There,
tragic.
there wasn't a single law. She was a beautiful young lady. She was a friend. She was a coworker. And it was horrible. But the only reason we have those protections now is because something that horrific happened. So, it's something you deal with when you enter this industry. I mean, it shouldn't be, but if you're going to be a person who is known, a person who's in the public eye, you're going to have to deal with the people who maybe aren't dealing with reality the best.
Now, Jeremy, one thing that's interesting is that just like Seinfeld, Growing Pains, the ratings didn't dip. Kurt just decided he didn't want to do it anymore.
Sort of. Our ratings held very steady until ABC started moving us around a lot. On Tuesday nights, we were competing with Cosby almost every week for number 2 behind Monday Night Football. Monday Night Football always number 1, but it was us and Cosby for about 2 years fighting for 2 and 3. And then they moved us to Wednesday because Tuesday was their big launch night and they had new shows they wanted to put in there, and that's understandable. But when we went to Wednesday, now we're up against a different dynamic on different nights, and we dropped to around the 20s to 30s in the ratings. And we held steady there for a good 3-4 years. But the last season, they decided to move us to Friday nights or Saturday nights, something like that. And that is the worst possible time you could possibly put a sitcom on because families are doing stuff and they're out and they're not sitting at home watching TV. So we went from a show that was consistently in the 20s and 30s to a show that was now in the 70s. So when I heard that they moved us to Saturday, I called Tracy Gold, my coworker, and I said, "So I guess we're done, huh?" I mean, that was just because you knew if you got moved to Saturdays, that was pretty much the kiss of death. But even until I think it was a week before the last episode, we didn't know for sure. ABC was still considering giving us an 8th year. So we had a whole different final episode written for the end of the 7th season that they had to scrap and write a finale because we found out so late that we weren't going to be coming back.
Very good. Very good. Well, it's time for some questions from the audience. They're lining
All
up.
right.
We have time for 3. I know Jeremy's a very busy guy, and we thank him so much.
No worries, brother.
It's awesome having you on the show. Now, this is from Arthur. He's from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. He said, now, this is a magnificent one, Gerard. He's so excited to have Jeremy on the show. His question is now, so often childhood stars get dealt with getting ripped off, getting molested. You mentioned earlier how you were protected from it. Who protected you from it? And tell us how other actors can benefit from that as well.
Well, I mean, the most beneficial thing was my immediate family, my mother, my grandmother, who never really allowed me to be out of their sight for too long. You know what I mean? They were very involved. They weren't overbearing or anything, but they were there on set every day, watching who was around me, watching the interactions. That was probably the most important. But on set, as I said, I had Alan Thicke, Joanna Kearns. I had our director. I had my set teacher. I had the prop guys. Everybody looked out for us. Now, here's the thing. We had I could be more, I don't know. But we had two predators on our show. One of our executive producers went to prison after our show for the production of child pornography. And we also had one of our co-star or guest actors, script coordinator, dialogue coach, and a bunch of other titles who went to prison for abuse of a kid and was the focus of that Nickelodeon documentary. He was on our show. I was around him every day, many times a day. Again, I was protected. I was looked out for by a lot of outside sources. Those were the people who looked out for me. I mean, we had a big cast and crew, and out of 200 people, we had two who were a little nefarious. But everybody else was looking out. Everybody else was always around. And that is probably what saved me.
Very good. Thank you for the profound answer. And Arthur, thank you for your question. This question is from Anita. This is from Anita. She is from New York, New York. She said, congratulations, Jeremy. So good to see you well. And she loves your speaking about your addiction and also overcoming it. Her question is, what was the toughest thing you had to deal with being a superstar? And does Growing Pains still pay you nice royalties?
Well, I'll answer the second part first. As an actor, every time one of your episodes shows, your residuals go down. So I'm very blessed that Growing Pains has been in syndication for so many years, but now that it has and it is played so many times, no, I'm now one of those actors who receives like $8 and $9 checks and occasionally a 1 cent check and stuff like that. That's just the truth. That's the way the deal is set up. We get very well paid up front, but it goes down considerably as time goes on. So, that one's kind of easy to answer. Sorry, what was the first part of the question?
And then the first part of the question is, what is the toughest thing you have to deal with
Right.
being a star?
When we were dealing with it, I think especially as a kid, was trying to keep that understanding that I wouldn't have a job without the fans, because sometimes the fans can be very intrusive. And as a kid, when you just want to go and have some fun, when you're at Disneyland or you're just at the mall with your friends or whatever it is, having sometimes 200 people come up to you and you stand there for 3.5 hours taking pictures and signing autographs while your friends are standing on the side going, what the hell is going on? You know, that can be a little tough as a kid. But I was very grateful that my mom and my grandmother especially really drilled that into me, that, you know, I would not have a career. I wouldn't have a job. We wouldn't be as popular if it wasn't for the fans. So I always felt that that was something that was owed in the transaction. You love what we're giving you. And if, you know, all you want from me is my signature on a paper and a photo, then that ought to be my pleasure. You know what I mean? And I have my mother and my grandmother to thank for that. But that was probably the hardest part, was trying to deal with the intrusions into your personal life. I'll give you one more real quick. High school prom. Took my girl to Benihana's, my high school girlfriend, and a guy came up and recognized me. I just said very simply, I said, I'd be happy to sign anything you want, but our food is already on the table. Would you wait until we're done eating, please? And he said, sure. And he pulled up a chair and sat down.
That really happened.
Yes, that really happened. So again, that part, those intrusions into your personal life could be very difficult, especially at that age. But I was very grateful that I had the wherewithal to be able to look at it in a bigger picture sense.
Very good. Thank you, Anita, for the question. We have one more time for one more, and that is from Tammy. She is from Chicago, Illinois. She says, you are the greatest. It's wonderful to see you on the Sherrod Show. Growing Pains was very deep and touched her heart for many, many years. Her question is, are you all considering doing a reboot?
Oh, we have considered it and we have talked about it. I don't know what's going on with it right now. I'll give you the quick answer is I actually developed one. I had a great writer. We did 6 episodes and a full 3-season arc of stories. And I had the cast on board. I had everybody on board. It was very much a tribute to Alan. And unfortunately, Warner Brothers wasn't interested. I had the right-hand man, the former right-hand man of Warner Brothers Television, as our showrunner. And when he approached them, I mean, he knows them all, they said, look, if we decide to do anything with Growing Pains, we have our own ideas about it. And that's that. We're not listening to outside ideas. So that was the last word I had on it. I know we would all love to do it, but I just don't know. Warner Brothers has all the rights and all the power. So
Very good. Thank you so much, Tammy. Now, there's so many more questions for you, Jeremy. Where can they reach out to you to be able to, for you to answer more of their questions, social media, email, etc.?
So the easiest is on my website. I have a message and questions thing on there. That's just jeremyjamesmiller.com. But if you want to find me on social media, it's Mr. Jeremy James Miller on Facebook and The Real Jeremy Miller on Instagram. And all those links are also on my website. And if you want to keep up with any of the projects I got coming up, we keep that stuff posted on the website as well.
Very good. Now, really quickly, you were the voice of Linus
Yes, sir.
on Happy New Year, Charlie Brown. Is that correct?
On Happy New Year, Charlie Brown, on This Is America, Charlie Brown, and also on the Snoopy TV special, musical TV special. So I got to do 3 big ones between 84 and 87. It was pretty awesome.
And they can keep up with your website to see what you have upcoming, because you have some pretty cool things coming up, correct?
Yep, absolutely. I have 3 or 4 new projects coming up, one of which we're set to start shooting next month. So keep your eyes out for that. I wish I could tell you more about it, but I can't. And I'm also tied into a couple horror movies, a couple comedy romances, and 2 TV shows. So as soon as those get moving forwards as well, I keep everything posted on the website.
Very good. Jeremy, do you have any final thoughts?
Honestly, guys, just love each other, keep supporting each other, keep being there for each other. It's all we can do right now.
That's from Jeremy Miller, the icon from Growing Pains. Thank you so much for stopping by on the Sherrod Show. And make sure that you stay tuned for our next episode of the Sherrod Show. We have the man himself, Mr. Martin Cove, stopping by on the show. Jeremy, really, thank you so much. You've been wonderful to us. We're going to have to do a part 2 to follow up with you, because his story, this is just half of the story. We have so much more to tell. Keep it locked here on the Sherrod Show app, as well as on the Sherrod Show on iHeartRadio. And then always remember, ladies and gentlemen, the best way to get back on your feet is to miss 3 car payments. I'm Sherrod. See you next time. Bye now.